Portland's most respected and lowest priced office furniture dealer.
Office Furniture Direct.
Dobar dan. That means good day. Talkcast PDX on the web at talkcastpdx.com. It's Tuesday, 26th today. April 26th. Name of the show is The Bogdanich Perspective. I'm your host, Paul Bogdanich, and welcome. Episode number 58. And I'm just going to call it old. As in literally old and getting old and just old. Talkcast PDX, the station, is sponsored by Office Furniture Direct, which is Portland's #1 commercial office furniture and cubicle dealer. From space planning to design, straight through delivery and installation, Office Furniture Direct takes care of it all. They're on the web at Office Furniture Direct or ofdpdx.com. And go visit and take care of all your office needs. Every day of the week or every day of the year is some kind of a day. Memorial Day, Mother's Day, the 4th of July. And today, the 26th of April, is National Alien Day. And it's part of Bedbug Awareness Week. So, just in case you were wondering, we're going to start with the, the interesting, fun little tidbits. If you could please put up graphic number 1. This is a painting. This is a gigantic painting. It's 12.4 feet tall by 21.25 feet wide. And it's obviously of Washington crossing the Delaware. It was painted in 1851 by Emanuel Lutz, I guess is how you say his name. And he did 3 versions, and they're all very similar, except for George Washington's pose and things of that nature, small details. But he did 3 versions. One was destroyed during the bombing of Europe during World War II. The other one hangs currently, it used to be in the White House, but it's now in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in the American Wing. And I've seen that one. It's a big painting. And then this one here that we're looking at was the third one. And this one's up for sale by Christie's, and the ask is $20 million. So we'll see what it actually goes for. Some of your impressionist paintings and stuff like that go for significantly more, but you have to remember the thing's size, 21.4 feet by 20 or 12.4 feet by 21.5 feet. So it's hard to adorn a hallway. It's not a hallway or a bathroom painting. It takes a major space to display it. And if you could take down number 1 and put up number 2, please. This is Kane Tanaka, I think. Kanetanaka in English. And she died last week, but she was born on January 2nd, 1903, and she was 119 years old when she passed on. She was Guinness's certified oldest living person, liked to play board games and solve math problems in her spare time, keep calm. When they certified her, which was a couple of years ago, they asked her what was her most happy moment in life, and she replied, "Now's good." I think in the Japanese translation, she simply said "now," and she passed away. The current oldest living person in the world is also a female, but in France, Sister Lucille Randon is 118. She was born on February 11th, 1904, compared to the now deceased Miss Tanaka, who was born on January 2nd, 1903. but always a woman. The XX lasts longer than the XY. But not to be outdone, if you could please take down number 2 and put up number 3. This is Jonathan. And Jonathan is a turtle. And Jonathan is the world's oldest living land animal. He is currently 190 years old. The picture of him on the left-hand side there was taken on or around 1885, and he was a big boy even then. But they estimate that he's in between 188 and 192 years old, so they call it 190. But he's still going pretty good. He may make 200, or longer. But he's the ones that we have record for the birth and continuous custody and this and that. But turtles live a lot longer than we do. And you can take that one down. And so the Queen this year is celebrating her 96th birthday, I believe. And Mattel Inc. has released a Barbie doll that's inspired by the Queen. I maybe should have brought a picture. It was pretty interesting. They kind of gave her the gray, whitish look as she has, now that she's, over 70. But they gave her figure when she was 26, during the Second World War, like that. And in the style of Barbie, I would say. But anyway, $75. You can probably go get those at your local toy store. Oh, you can put it up if you can find it. There it is, I guess. I can't see it yet. Yeah, there she is. I guess they made her smaller breasted than she is, or was, according to that picture. But she's got the blue slash and the gray hair and all that. But anyway, that's her 96. That's your Barbie doll, $75. And you can take that down. And now let's, move on to the more mundane matters for the week. Remember, TalkCast PDX, not censored by TalkCast PDX, but we broadcast over YouTube. And so have to maintain the community guidelines and standards for YouTube, which means there are certain things you can't talk about. And that list seems to be expanding. It's recently been moving in the direction of people who have alternate perceptions of events in Eastern Europe. But currently it only concerns anything medical. So we have to stay within those guidelines. And I just point out, as an overarching thing, the only thing we're good at, the British and the Americans, is propaganda. And we have this group of people among us that believe that we're in control of our own destiny. Anything is possible. And if we're all only on the same page and believe in what we're doing, that we can do anything. And again, they must have never read a history book in their entire life. Everybody in all these grand movements always believes the same thing. But anyway, that's where we're at, and they're just using it as an organ of control. Not only here, it's worldwide. Poland, the most prominent journalist in Poland is a guy by the name of Konstanty Gerbert, and they have a large Polish paper similar to what our New York Times used to be, a very authoritative large paper. And he had to quit. He was their leading journalist, and he had to quit because he would not stop. They ordered him to start referring to certain Ukrainian battalions as far right, and to no longer refer to them as Nazi or neo-Nazi. And he refused, so they fired him. Just a couple of, just on Ukraine, President Zelensky said that Russia plans to use tactical nuclear weapons, and somebody asked Sergei Lavrov, who was the foreign minister, Russia's foreign minister, what he thought about that. And Lavrov goes, he says many things. It depends on what he drinks, what he smokes, or what he puts up his nose. But he says many things, and that's all. That was the only comment from Lavrov. From their State Department. I guess they call it their foreign ministry. The State Department spokeswoman for them, Maria Zakharova, was a spokeswoman, and she just said that Russia has lost confidence in Ukraine's negotiators and will deal directly with the United States and NATO from now on. It's the United States and NATO that are leading the process in Ukraine. And you'd have to say that that's true. Currently, sometime this week or last week or something, our Secretary of State, Blinken, I guess is his name, and the Secretary of Defense, Austin, showed up in Kiev. In both the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times this morning, this is the headline here. It's front page on both papers. In this particular paper, it says, U.S. seeks to weaken Russia to deter future aggression. And the sum and substance of the article in the New York Times is exactly the same. They use slightly different words. But when you control the propaganda, that's when it shows up in both major papers on the front page on the same day, that's basically a release. We're tacitly admitting that, yeah, we're the ones controlling the war. Well, yeah, why are we doing that? U.S. seeks to weaken Russia to deter future aggression. Okay, but we're the ones that are prosecuting this war. That's real clear. Ukraine, for its part, says that they need $7 billion a month, all right, from us just to keep going, that they need some other, huge amount in reconstruction funds. And the papers say that so far this year, we've given Ukraine $3.5 billion, which is more than the 3.0 or $3.2 billion that we gave Israel, making them the number one recipient of foreign aid. And the only reason that's in the papers is the Israelis want to grind us for more money, in my opinion. And they'll probably get it. But these numbers are totally fallacious. All right, what we do to fund Ukraine and have been doing since 2014 is we go to these international organizations, World Bank, World Economic, something or other, and we get them to loan them the money, but we sign off as a guarantor. And then 2 or 3 units, so it doesn't show up on our books, but the Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, vote to these guarantees. Then we wait for some convenient opportunity like the pandemic, where we're throwing around $1 trillion anyway, and we pay back the IMF and these other these other NGOs for the money that they've lent, and nobody notices. But I mean, since 2014, we've been giving Ukraine at least $10 billion a year. But if you're wondering why that is, it's because the U.S. seeks to weaken Russia to deter future aggression. Or so we say. It's interesting when you control the propaganda, you can be as hypocritical as your population will allow. And in the case of the British and American populations whose memory doesn't seem to extend past about last week, that's pretty easy. There's a small chain of islands called the Solomon Islands. And I didn't immediately know where they were. I confused them with the South Sandwich Islands. But they're right next to New Guinea. They're straight east of New Guinea, which is about 1,000 miles east-northeast of Australia, 1,100 miles, something like that. And the Chinese signed a diplomatic and industrial and possibly a naval base agreement with the Solomon Islands. And the Australians and the U.S. absolutely go apoplectic, and say that that's a threat. China's expanding. It's a threat to Australian sovereignty, and this and that. And somebody asked the Chinese Foreign Ministry about that. And that's all you read in our press is how the Chinese are, moving into the Solomon Islands, and that's what you read in our press. Somebody asked him about that, the Chinese Foreign Ministry. Quote, the U.S. claims to respect human rights, but the wars of aggression launched by the U.S. and its allies have killed over 500,000 civilians and made over 26 million people refugees. Yet no one is held accountable for war crimes and crimes against humanity. The U.S. even announced sanctions on the International Criminal Court, who would investigate the war crimes of the U.S. military. The U.S. has used economic power to coerce countries, whether they are big or small, far away or nearby, friend or foe. When it comes to stabbing its allies in the back, the U.S. has never hesitated, as we have seen repeatedly. Facts have proven that the U.S. is the biggest spreader of disinformation, culprit of coercive diplomacy, and saboteur of world peace and stability. From the U.S.-EU dialogue to the AUKUS, which is the Australian-UK U.S. security treaty, which is the thing that's freaking out about the Solomon Island things. Trilateral, from the U.S.-EU dialogue to the AUKUS trilateral security partnership, the Quad and the Five Eyes alliance, that's Japan, Korea, and so on, to try and ring China. The U.S. is using democracy, human rights, rules and order as a pretext to cover up its shady activities of creating division and stoking confrontation. End quote. Now, that's a public statement by their foreign ministry, translated into English for us. I'm not sure what language it was spoken in. It may have even been spoken in English. It's hard to say. You'll never read about it. When you control the propaganda and you have this idea that anything's possible if we can only keep the people in line, they can say whatever they want. We can say whatever we want, and none of it makes any difference because truth doesn't make any difference. But anyway, that's what they said. And like I said, some of the hypocrisy, Earth Day was the other day, and Biden announced a process is underway to make every vehicle in the country's military, quote unquote, climate friendly, adding that, we're spending billions of dollars to do it, is what he said. And the very idea that you can make the U.S. military eco-friendly is kind of comical. In Iraq and in Syria and in Libya and in Afghanistan, when we fire a shell larger than 20 millimeter, 30 millimeter anti-tank round, anything like that, the warheads are made of what's called depleted uranium because it's a heavier element than steel and it has better penetrating capabilities. But DU, we totally contaminated Iraq, Syria with DU, and the birth defects are awful. You can go look at them online if you want. There's pictures, but nobody does, and we never mention them. In Vietnam, we sprayed with dioxin, birth defect. It was just horrible. But the idea, it's just what I'm saying is it's just gross hypocrisy. But if you listen to us, you'll never know about it. The Asian Global Institute, the guy at the Asian Global Institute, Ibrahim Hassem, was asked about the U.S. policy on oil and rubles and why the Saudis won't go along and all the rest of it. And he said, quote, it's insulting to hear U.S. officials tell Chinese and Asians you have thrived because of us. We have provided Asia with security and stability. Ironically, they say the same things to the Arabs while their mercenaries destroy Arab cities. They live in a parallel universe, is what he said. And they live in a universe where they think if you say something enough times and truly believe that it becomes reality. That's what a core of these people think. Very dangerous, irrespective of whether it's a realistic dream or not, humans always screw shit up. Excuse my language. Everything we do throughout history, we always make a hash of it. We may perfect it in a couple of 100 years or 1,000 years or something. But when we first roll out with it, we always make a hash of it every single time. And that gets back to the censored content. We already may have made a hash of one of these efforts, if you will. More Chinese stuff. I was looking, I say I read the ancients, and I'm reading a couple of books. And I'm rereading Suetonius. And Suetonius was an interesting character. He wrote in the year about 120, but he wrote about all the Caesars, the 12 Caesars in between Julius Caesar and Domitian, which was the year about 90. So he was writing about past figures. And he was what's called a scholarly biographer, or writing a scholarly biography, which is very different than history. History is like Tacitus, and all those people are chronologically ordered, but this is a scholarly biography. And I was in the chapter on Augustus, and this was written in the year 110, mind you. And we're talking about Augustus as a military commander. Augustus was the emperor after Julius Caesar, poisoned by his wife. Did die in his own bed, but she wanted her son Tiberius to be Caesar, so she helped him along. These guys never die a natural death. Of the 12, only one died a natural death. But anyway, this is what he wrote. The two faults which he condemned, this is what Suetonius wrote about Augustus. The two faults which he condemned most strongly in a military commander were haste and recklessness. And he constantly quoted such Greek proverbs as, more haste, less speed, and give me a safe commander, not a rash one. And he used the Latin saying, well done is quickly done. It was a principle of his that no campaign or battle should ever be fought unless more could clearly be gained by victory than lost by defeat. And he would compare those who took great risk in the hope of gaining some small advantage to a man who fishes with a golden hook, though aware that nothing he can catch will be valuable enough to justify its loss, of the golden hook. And we don't have anybody that thinks in those terms. Nobody. What if everything goes perfectly in Ukraine, what do we gain? Weaken and deter future Russian aggression. That's a very thin pretext. We have nothing to gain over there. Great deal to lose. And when you have a very, very weak president, as we do, what happened is the underlings in the Defense Department and the State Department that have been working on this project for 20 years. The idea that we were going to spread democracy and freedom to the Middle East, the same idea, same people. But you have two in particular, a guy by the name of Robert Kagan and his wife, Victoria Nuland, who's in charge of the Ukraine operation, was in charge of the coup that overthrew the government in 2014. With the exception of Trump's 4 years, has been running the operation ever since. And I don't know what her motivations are, but I mean, if she follows the Roman example, she wants her place, in history. And you have a weak president who has a, fondly vaguely fond recognition of Ukraine, and so we're in it over there. And what's our goal? U.S. seeks to weaken Russia to deter future aggression. That's a nice way of saying they're going to drag this out as long as possible, make it cost much as possible. And a lot of that is going to be inflation and food costs, and it's all only possible because they can print the money. I'll just say that again. All this corruption and all this nonsense about let's make our dreams come true are only possible if you can print the money, divorce yourself from the consequences of your actions. Just print it. And so as long as that continues, we're in problems. And speaking of inflation, Indonesia accounts for about a third of the exports of edible oils, sunflower and palm seed and blah, blah, blah. And they announced that they're going to start withholding some of that because there have been riots in the street over there about the rising prices of vegetable oil. So they're going to feed themselves first, and it's going to crimp the amount that they export. They kind of walked that statement back a little bit this morning, but not much. But so in other words, they're going to feed themselves first, and that's going to drive up the prices of what we put in the inflation report. The EU is still trying to figure out ways to pay the Russians in rubles. They think they've come up with something. I'm not sure it'll work, but we'll see. Just in a little tidbit, in this world where anything's possible, blah, blah, blah. Speaker Pelosi held a dinner in San Francisco and raised over $4.4 million on Tuesday last week. It was the largest individual donor. No corporations, no PACs, no this and that, just rich people in ever. Largest fundraising amongst individuals ever. She's raised a total of $45.7 million for Democrats in the first 3 months of 2022. And that's how, and having the ability to do that, while your husband, of course, trades on inside information and makes you, worth hundreds of millions of dollars yourself, are the people that gravitate to the top of a system where anything is possible. All you have to do is be charismatic and lie to the people, and that's where we're at. And that brings us to the thing that everybody has everybody's knickers in a twist is Elon Musk and Twitter. I've worked in the financial industry for years. I find it surprising how uneducated people, and including reporters, everybody there's so much ink being spilled about Elon Musk and Twitter. What's he going to do? This, that. But they all say he bought it. No, he didn't buy it. There's laws concerning how you take over a company. And what he's doing now is called a tender offer, where you offer to buy all the outstanding shares for a set price. His tender offer is in cash. When one public company takes over another, sometimes they offer a combination of cash and stock or all stock and stuff. But these things are very tightly regulated by law. And he went to the board to see if he could, buy 10% on the cheap, relatively speaking, and coerce the board into, letting him have a seat on the board where he could do things that way. So that's the low cost option. Tried that. Board says no. So he went with what's called a tender offer, which is where he, irrespective of what the board says, just makes a cash offer to buy all the stock. And what's been happening lately is the board, once somebody does that, has to come out with a statement of whether they support the tender offer is reasonable and in the best interest of shareholders or not. And the Twitter board apparently is going to say that it's a valid offer and should be considered by the shareholders. I don't know what exact language they'll use. But the point of the matter is he hasn't taken over Twitter. It has to get regulatory approval, and then the shareholders have to vote. Okay. Whenever you take over, whenever you have something that affects more than, substantially liquidates or changes ownership of a corporation, a public corporation, you have to have a vote of the shareholders because those are the ultimate owners of any excess capital. Debtors come first, but after that, excess capital is owned by the shareholders, so they have to vote. And that'll take, several months. And then because he bought, what's Twitter have? Maybe 150,000 or 200,000 shareholders. And he's going to buy all their stock, and it's going to be the property of maybe 2, 3, maybe one person or groups. So the stock doesn't have enough owners to be a public company anymore. So the company will go private. Typically what they do in that situation is they grow it and then they release it public again, make a ton of money and so on. But that, from a nuts and bolts perspective, is what's happening with Elon Musk. What they're writing about, all the ink that's being spilled, is that if he does this and he has this commitment to quote unquote free speech that he professes to have, he also has a love of money, right? Or he wouldn't be able to do this, But if he actually has this fondness for free speech, that will be a thorn in the side of the people that think that anything's possible, and all we need to do is keep everybody on the same page and stay happy and control the propaganda, because he'll give a platform to people who think differently, and that's what all the fuss is ultimately about. The regulators can deny the transaction. And, with an administration like you currently have and a Congress like you currently have, wouldn't surprise me. Twitter's a small company, so there may not, and it has plenty of competition, so there may not be any basis to take it to the FTC. But if they want to, for political reasons, that's what they'll do. And that's the reality of the situation. And I would just reiterate from last week that when the monarchies back in the mid-19th century, 1850s, when it was clear that monarchies were no longer a tenable system, the philosophers Locke, Hume, Marx, Smith, those people, started debating what system could replace monarchy. And they had different classifications of systems. And the three authoritarian systems were communism, fascism, and capitalism. Those were your three authoritarian systems. And the only substantial difference in between them is who controls. In the communist system, it's the party. In a fascist system, it's an individual man. And then later that morphed to individual man in concert with industry, a la Mussolini. And in capitalism, it's the people with the money. And what we're seeing here in broad terms is this is how a capitalistic system resolves a fundamental dispute. If you have a dispute with this idea that we can just tell them anything and, so on, and you want to provide alternate viewpoints, the only way to do that, you can't go through your political leadership because they don't make a difference. They don't control the system. The only way to do it is to have $45 billion in this case, or to be able to raise $45 billion so that you can take over one of the companies. And it happens all the time. Bezos and all these people buy the Washington Post. New York Times is no longer independent. And you have 6 companies, that basically control everything you see through all the media. And this guy wants to come in and allow dissidents to speak on a separate platform. And that's threat to these people that earnestly believe that the success of their agenda depends on everybody being on board, and let's control that propaganda. And that would be us and the Brits. And that brings us to the markets. If you could put up graph number 4. And this is just where we are. Same graph, except for the additions of last week. Last week, from Monday through Friday, the market fell 2.75%, so almost 3%. This morning, when I looked, it was down 1.75%. As I sit here right now, it is down 1.5% so far this morning. This is because it's earnings season. What do I have here today? Well, this week, Amazon has earnings. Google has earnings later today. Where else? PayPal, all your techs. And then next week you have Pfizer and Disney and NVIDIA and so on. So this week and next are Microsoft reports today, I think after the close. Tesla reported already last week. Netflix reported already. Like that. But your earnings are coming in, and in between forward discussion and whatnot. Like I said, it's down another 1.5% today. So 1.5% on 4,300 points, call it, is down another 43 points. So down from 42.96 to 42.60, which would be, approaching the March 8th low of 41.71. But we'll see what happens as we go through earnings. And you can take that one down. Like I said, for last week, the markets were down 2.75%. Our portfolio of the top 30 stocks that was capitalization weighted lost $3,275 instead of $2,750, so lost more. Top 30 stocks that were equal weighted lost $3,020, so that's still more than $2,750. And the top three every sector, more diversified, only lost $2,210 instead of $2,750, so it outperformed the index. It's a controlled system if we only stay positive and on the same, to my view, this market is how low the Fed lets it go. If it was a free market and the Fed wasn't playing with it, we would go, to 3,600, 38, 3,600 from 4,400. Big move. But it's not, and the Fed supports it. And so you're talking about what level is the Fed going to support it? And now they have to balance the inflationary concerns and rate rises. But maybe if we just don't tell anybody, it's all going to be possible. But I just don't like it. I wouldn't, like I keep saying, hold cash, wait till the election. You may get a bounce at that time, and trade that carefully. If you have to stay in, go with a dividend portfolio. That'll hurt you less. Anyway, 54 stocks that we tracked, 39 were down, 15 were up. Only 4 stocks were up more than 2%, and that was Tesla on earnings, Broadcom, 2.3%, no reason. And then 2 real estate concerns on earnings, American Tower and Prologis up 2.5%, and Prologis was 3.7%. And those are the only stocks that gained more than 2%. We had 11 stocks that gained at all, but less than 2%. And that's Intel and Target and Procter & Gamble and Abbott Laboratories, 3M, Johnson & Johnson, Philip Morris, big dividend stock, great stock. The other real estate concern, JP Morgan, Cisco, Coca-Cola, gained. What did Coca-Cola gain? Not much, but it didn't lose, right? And the market lost almost 3%. So it gained 0.35%, so 0.4%. But their strategy to deal with this inflation is they rise prices first and hard. If inflation is going to make their costs go up a nickel a can, they raise it a dime a can so that they don't have to raise it again in 3 months. They can wait 6 or 9, depending on what happens. So their strategy, unlike a lot of other people, Procter & Gamble and these other people, was to raise prices early and quickly. And in terms of carbonated beverages, the initial results indicate that has not significantly impacted sales volumes. So their stock, as last week it held, I think it'll be up a little this week. Anyway, 11 stocks that went down at all, but less than 2%, and Bank America, Target, the railroads, Walmart, UPS, Duke Energy, which is a utility, Kinder Morgan, which is a gas pipeline company, Home Depot, the other real estate concern, and MasterCard were all down marginally. The biggest loser was MasterCard, 1.7%. Then you have, 11 stocks that were down more than 2%, but less than 3%. And in those, we're waiting for reports here. Microsoft and Lowe's and Apple and Visa and Honeywell and Berkshire Hathaway and United Health and Boeing Aircraft and Adobe. And that's it. And then 7 stocks that were down in between 3 and 5%. And that would be ExxonMobil and Sherwin-Williams on those supply concern, ExxonMobil on the price of oil. Costco, just because of uncertainty in retail. Nike, uncertainty in retail. Verizon Communications, probably on subscriber growth. Comcast on subscriber growth. Those were both down 3.6, and Comcast was down 4.6. And then Amazon on, increased prices and concerns there, 4.9%. Then you had 10 stocks that fell more than 5%. ConocoPhillips on the price of oil down 5.3, Google down 5.6. Google announces earnings today, so this is anticipation of their earnings. Chevron down 6.2, Nvidia, which doesn't report until May, down 8.2, Disney, which doesn't report until May, down 9.4, Pfizer, which doesn't report until May, down 9.4%. NextEra Energy, which already reported, and their stock is down 10.7%. NextEra Energy is a solar concern. So remuneration from the federal government programs, grants, and so on are big parts of their business, but they're down 10.7%. Facebook reports the 27th, so day after tomorrow. They are down 12.4% in anticipation, and that's just that meta, thing. It's a perfect embodiment kind of this ethic, If we can just get everybody on the same page and everybody believes, we can create our own reality. And he's literally trying to do that with, put you in your own little universe with these guys. No, that's the plan, and, their stock used to be $350 or $330 a share. A few months ago, it's now trading at $184 $184.11 is what it closed on Friday. Anyway, PayPal, just terrible management. You have to, that thing is going nowhere until you get rid of the entire board of directors and the officer corps, which is not going to happen. They report tomorrow, but they're down 16% in anticipation of earnings, and Netflix fell 37%. 37%. They spend a lot of money producing shows. Nobody's watching them. Why is a matter of opinion. But anyway, it didn't work. They spent too much money producing a bunch of shows that nobody watched, and their stock is down whatever it was in a week, mind you. 37% in a week. So if you were heavily invested in that one, you did not have a good week. And that's it for today. The Bogdanich Perspective, PDX, TalkCast PDX, Tuesdays, always Tuesday. Join me again next Tuesday. If you have anything you'd like me to talk about, like the particulars of Elon Musk taking over Twitter or something like that, send me an email, paul@stockbetor.com, or if you need a good researcher, let me know that too. That's where I find all this fun stuff, like the painting for sale and the old people and the old tortoise and the idealized image of the queen. But in any event, join me next Tuesday. I've been the Bogdanich Perspective on TalkCast PDX, and do widzenia. That means goodbye.
Portland's most respected and lowest priced office furniture dealer.
Office Furniture Direct.